In May of 2013, a Nigerian tugboat called the Jascon 4 was working about 30 kilometers off the coast of Nigeria, helping stabilize an oil tanker in the Atlantic. On board were 12 men. One of them was Harrison Okene, the ship's cook, 29 years old, quiet, religious, married for just 5 years. At around 4:30 in the morning, while most of the crew were still asleep in their bunks, Okene got out of bed to use the bathroom. He was wearing nothing but his boxer shorts. He was sitting on the toilet when the ocean decided to end his entire world. A massive swell hit the Jascon 4 broadside, the kind of rogue wave that rolls in out of nowhere. The tugboat flipped completely upside down in seconds. Water poured in through every hatch. Alarms screamed, then drowned. The lights went out. Okene was thrown off the toilet and slammed against the ceiling, which was now the floor. He could hear his crewmates screaming somewhere in the dark, banging on metal, gargling water. He fought his way out of the bathroom into a flooded hallway, grabbing at pipes and door frames. Somehow, in pitch black, he found his way to the engineer's office, a small room near the back of the boat. And there, in the corner, where the floor used to be the ceiling, the water stopped rising. Trapped against the upside-down hull was a pocket of air, maybe 4 square feet of it. The Jascon 4 sank to the seafloor, settling on its roof at about 30 meters down. 100 feet of ocean now sat on top of Harrison Okene. That air pocket shouldn't have existed for long. A human at rest burns through roughly a cubic foot of air every couple of hours. 4 square feet of bubble with the ceiling pressing down on him gave Okene maybe a day, day and a half of breathable air before carbon dioxide buildup would knock him unconscious. But there was a strange physics gift down there. At 30 meters deep, the pressure was 4 times what it is on the surface. That compressed the air, effectively giving him 4 times the oxygen molecules in the same space. That math is what saved him. Without realizing it, he was breathing dense, pressurized air that bought him days instead of hours. The cold was the bigger problem. The Atlantic at that depth sits around 12 degrees Celsius. He was in his underwear, soaked, with water up to his chest. He found a life vest floating nearby and pulled it on. He stacked up some loose mattresses he could feel in the dark, climbing onto them to keep his body out of the water as much as possible. And he prayed, out loud, for hours. His wife had given him a small Psalm 54 card before the trip, and he kept reciting it in the dark. He couldn't see anything. Not his hand in front of his face, not the water, not the walls, just sound. Creaking metal, dripping, the occasional deep groan of the hull settling. And then there were the things touching him. Soft brushes against his thighs and feet in the water. At first he thought it was debris, clothing, floating papers. It wasn't. His 11 crewmates were dead, and their bodies were drifting through the flooded compartments of the boat. Some of them floated into his little air pocket with him. Worse, the sharks had found the wreck. He could hear thrashing in the water somewhere beyond the walls. Later, he'd learned the sharks were already feeding on the men who'd been swept out into open water. So he stood there, in the dark, in the cold, listening to sharks eat his coworkers, with corpses bumping against his legs, waiting to either suffocate or freeze. Hours stretched. He had no watch, no light, no way to tell if it was day or night. He started losing track of whether he was even still alive. On the surface, the shipping company had assumed everyone was dead. But Nigerian authorities hired a South African dive company, DCN Global, to recover the bodies. Almost 3 days after the Jascon 4 went down, a team of saturation divers descended to the wreck. Among them was a diver named Nico van Heerden. They were there to retrieve corpses. That was the job. Nobody expected anything else. Van Heerden swam into the flooded interior, passing through narrow corridors, his light cutting through silt and floating debris. He found the first body, then another. He pushed deeper into the wreck, into the engineer's office, and started measuring a body floating near the entrance, calling the size up to the surface team. And then, a hand reached out of the blackness and grabbed his. You can hear it on the recording. Van Heerden recoiling, shouting, the surface team confused, asking him to repeat. He's alive! He's alive! There's a man down here! He's alive! Okene had heard the divers banging around in the wreck. He'd swum out of his air pocket toward the sound, in pitch black, holding his breath, feeling along the walls until his fingers found the diver's hand. The divers had brought spare gear, but no spare helmet his size. They managed to fit him with a mask and a hot water suit, and slowly guided him out of the wreck. Okene had been breathing pressurized air for almost 60 hours. His blood was saturated with dissolved nitrogen at 4 atmospheres of pressure. If they'd brought him straight to the surface, the nitrogen would have boiled out of his blood like a shaken soda bottle. It would have killed him in minutes. So they transferred him, still under pressure, into a small, hyperbaric chamber on the dive support ship. He'd survived 3 days under the ocean, and now he had to spend almost 3 more days inside a metal tube to slowly come back to atmospheric pressure. 60 hours of decompression. He ate through a small airlock. Doctors monitored him through a tiny porthole. He hadn't seen his wife, hadn't called anyone, hadn't even fully processed that he was alive. When they finally cracked the chamber open, he walked out thinner, hollow-eyed, but breathing surface air for the first time in 5 days. His wife had already held a funeral for him. She'd been told everyone aboard the Just Gone 4 was dead. The phone call she got that afternoon was, by her own account, the strangest moment of her life. Okene swore he'd never go near the ocean again. For 2 years, he kept that promise. But then something shifted. In 2015, he enrolled in a commercial diving program in South Africa. He trained for months, qualified, and went back to work on offshore rigs, as a diver this time. The man who spent nearly 3 days trapped under 100 feet of black water now puts the suit on willingly and goes back down.